I think I'll let you talk about the time period and when you talk a little bit about your work, if you're doing that today.
Yeah.
That's all up to you.
Sure.
I don't want to stand here and pontificate, the professor and me. But I did want to say, before turning over the floor, you can read about him. If you were to Google Dennis's name, you'll see reviews come up from Art in America, the New York Times, Art Forum. I've enjoyed doing some background reading on him. He was also celebrated by Jerry Saltz, not a minor name in art criticism, in New York. Some years ago, he said, Jerry Saltz says, Balk hates A to B logic. He loves tangents, incompletion, and reversal. He inverts thought, he turns it inside out, takes unexpected turns, and juxtaposes different ideas in order to create new perceptions of the world. He layers information the way artists layer materials. Imagine an encyclopedia in the form of a Rubik's Cube, and you get an idea of Balk's approach to knowledge. And he called you a brainiac. So on that note, I'll let you take over, brainiac.
All right, thank you very much. It's true, I was involved in a, we knew it at the time as being a very important gallery because we were very much challenging what was going on in the neighborhood in Soho and the East Village, South Soho. And yeah, we knew we were pretty tight in terms of supporting each other, and although later, in the late periods of that, in the mid-2000s, when the historians started writing about American fine artists because they have to find something to write about. They then started quantifying it in ways that were, for the most part, not really representative of what American fine arts was. But I'll get into that. What I thought I would do here, if it's okay, would just be to kind of start where I started, and then a lot of you guys know this work, and if you don't, then let me please introduce it to you. But I came from the West Coast. In Los Angeles, I went to Cal Arts during its absolute, just past the heyday when the David Sallies and the Pictures Generation came out of Cal Arts, and it used to be called the Cal Arts Mafia because if you went to graduate school within a year, you were, selling paintings at Mary Boone for a lot of money. And I was in the generation just after that when. Oh, what happened? Oh yeah, we need power for sure. So I got stuck in LA in between generations, and so I made frequent trips to New York, and could tell that I really needed to be in New York. So I left LA and moved to New York in 1987, the year Warhol died. So my big inspirations all along when I was coming up as a young intellectual were the obvious ones. This piece by Duchamp was probably the most important work and the most important influence on me because he did so much with so little. And that became then a methodology that I was very driven to try to recreate, as I think a lot of artists are, or at least the good artists are interested in paradigm shifts, absolute rupture of the status quo, How can you make everything change overnight with one work? Because that's the best possible kind of artwork to want to make. So that's what I've striven for my career. And again, you know, so much with so little. So when I was making first trips to New York, this is what was going on. Sherry Levine was rephotographing Walker Evans. And to me, that was like so great because to me, it gave me a lot of hope that there were people in my relative generation who were willing to throw everything away and ruin everything and destroy everything and go way out on a limb and just say that art is not precious, art is not some sort of personal inspiration, it has nothing to do with spirituality, the heart, or any kind of tragic sentimentality. It was all just thrown away in a very quick sweep by the pictures generation. And so I thought that was fantastic. And to me, that was just a great model and something that I wanted to be part of. And again, aspire to. So for me, this is a Duchampian move. Sherry Levine rephotographing Walker Evans. Likewise, Richard Prince, his famous photo series where he photographed the Marble Man. So again, for me, it was like art was not some inner, tragic, desperate thing that the soul had to wrangle with and pull out and recreate for us, the audience in the world. It was already out there. It was everywhere. Just point a camera at a cigarette package or a billboard and boom, that's as much of a comment as you could ever hope to make as an artist, which I believe is true. Richard Prince again, photographing magazine ads. Then when I started going to the East Village, it was so fantastic. The galleries, Nature More, International Wood Monument, Jagoni Modern Art. You know, there was like, and Collins Gallery, not to a little bit lesser extent. Collins Gallery was on 6th Street next to Lisa Spellman's 303 Gallery, and everybody was doing crazy, I don't know, I walk into International Monument and I would just like be blown away, like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe he thought to do that. It's a Heinz Steinbeck. So I thought I would, and I'm going to read a little bit. If it's too boring, just let me know, okay? So a lot of these shows in East Village at International Wood Monument were curated by this curatorial duo called Tricia Collins and Richard Milazzo. Collins and Milazzo. A visit to a show organized by the twosome was an instant entree to a world in which cool conceptualism, an overheated market, and French theory and overdrive shared the same bed. For artists, being tapped by the curatorial duo meant that suddenly one's work was part of the discourse. It was a heady time, made even more so by the deliberate ambiguity fostered by the curators themselves of the role they played in marketing the work they championed. From March '84 to May '93, a mind-boggling 44 exhibitions, virtually all accompanied by catalogs, co-authored text, in many cases the verbal pyrotechnics and occasional lapses into self-parody outweighed the work on view. Surprisingly, the pair's most fertile period came early with a series of groundbreaking mini-surveys of new art, like Still Life with Transaction, The New Capital, Paravision, and The New Poverty. All really fantastic shows. And that's the key. It was everything to be part of the discourse. It meant, it was just so profoundly important to be working towards the common mind of tackling the issues that were so hot in that day. And for the work of art, in the post-pictures generation and post-abstractionist period, the work of art was being collected at a pace never seen after the Warhols and Rauschenbergs. So the limousines came down to the East Village, and they, you know, they come in, they step into the gallery and buy everything, and just write a check, boom, out, 5 minutes, we want everything. And so Steinbeck and Bickerton and Koons started making work about that commodity, that later became commodity critique. So this work is all about the work of art as a commodity, which to me is absolutely discursive and profoundly dialectical. It took these guys to take that dialectical step back and say, this is what the work of art is now. And that is discourse, and that is what we all wanted to be part of. We wanted to be part of that discourse. This is actually Bickerton at International Wood Monument, probably 87. So logos, these were later then became part of the breakout show that moved the East Village to Soho, which was in, I don't know, like 87, 89. Suddenly,
even earlier.
yeah, even you got to think of like New York is like, you know, it's like downtown Bangkok, you know, but the geo zone, the political zones in the art world were so tight.
Yes.
And so rigorously defended. And
I mean,
so
when I started in '85 writing, Mary Boone was the senator on
Soho.
West Broadway.
Yeah, West Broadway.
And that was all neo-expressionism. So Dennis is getting at the school that was then called Neo-Geo. These guys are all part of Neo-Geo. And this is kind of debunking all of that expressionist, heartfelt, dramatic painting that I saw when I first started writing. Like
the Jean-Michel Basquiat and the Rick Kroll, and it was like the East Village was this place where you had to do heroin, you had to have been beaten up pretty regularly, your apartment has to have been burned down a couple of times. And then you make a show and millionaire.
And also the real estate market, remember, is part of this in New York. It was all moving from Soho to the East Village. In a way, it took briefly, but then it ended up in Chelsea. But But right now we're in the East Village moving to Soho. So again, it's like 6 blocks away. Difference between day and night. And I lived just north of the East Village. I was like 14th Street. So, but I go to the village, and at night you still hear, people getting shot.
Oh hell yes! Walking down the street. I think I wrote about this somewhere. Walking down the street, everybody miserable. Pat Hearn's beautiful gallery showing Philip Taft and all these great artists, and some kid in front of me gets his head smashed in by a bunch of drug addicts with a 2x4. On my way to work. Fires burning, Cher bought a condo. But anyway, the point was that for us, who were investing everything in this discourse, to move 4 blocks into Soho was an absolute paradigm shift. So what happened was Leo Castelli and Liliana Sanaben came down to the East Village, and they saw Jeff Koons, Ashley Bickerton, Chaim Steinbeck, and Peter Halley, and she took them. So the big show then was that group of 4, and it was the Fab Four, and they opened. This is Jeff Koons' early work. Sorry, I'll get off track, and you'll have to get me back on track if you want or not. So this is Jeff Koons in the East Village. This is what I'm talking about. It's like, okay, what is this work about? nothing. It's about, you know, what you buy and put on display. There's nothing more here except consumer objects. Brilliant, you know, paradigm changer. And of course, now these pieces are have redefined and they define who we are to this day. So Juliana Sonnabend gets the Fab Four. They open all in one night. It was the reinvention of Soho. Remember that Soho was the haven. It was the factory, warehouses, and then it was occupied by the first generation conceptualists, Richard Serra, Mel Bachner, all the guys who were sort of the U.S. Povert group. And they made monumental works in steel and oil, and Richard Serra's great splashing at Caselli Warehouse, where he'd just throw molten lead. It was very visceral, first generation conceptualist.
It was the 70s, I think it was.
Yeah, the 70s.
At least.
And so again, you know, it's already set in motion and it's quintessential art history that generations try to kill their fathers. They try to kill what was the precedent. Harold Bloom built a career on this, the anxiety of influence. You want to overtake and kill the forefathers. So the methodology for that from post-Renaissance on has been reductionism. So reducing the work of art to its fundamental qualities. The conceptualists did it in their way, the Neo Geo, you know, and then after that, it was always about reducing it down to its primary qualities or its something smallest common denominator. So the 70s then had been built up on the foundation of the conceptualists, and then everyone was like, fuck that, and they moved to the East Village where it had this feeling. So all in one night, everyone moves back to Soho at Sonnabend's gallery. Weissman was there. This piece is called the Morgue Slab. This was actually, this is to me is like one of the greatest works of art ever. I love this piece. But in the Sonnabend show, he showed a piece called The Whole Public Thing. And it was similar to this textured pattern, but it was just on the ground, and it had 4 toilet seats, and it was like the greatest thing. It was like art has no value except as a commodity. In that same show, Koons, this is a different Koons, but in the same show was Koons's Rabbit, which is, as you all know, became the icon for 21st century art. But so this is like one heady, heated night of, you know, egos and cocaine and money and just, you know, everything at stake. And this guy, he comes in and he goes, you know, art has value. It can't be reduced down to being nothing. And he takes one of the toilet seats and rips it off, and he goes over and he smashes the window and throws it out the window. And the gallery director is, you know, I don't know, you know the gallery director at Sonnabend, a great guy. He's always, you know, like totally tailored suit. He's shrieking and everyone's running around. And it's like, okay, I know, this is the place where this is the moment where everything begins. And so that's where it really began for me, was that night when I could see that discourse and the philosophy surrounding art is not an elitist, private, cerebral, text-based thing. It's like there are people in the world like me who live and breathe it and who are willing to kill and die for it, and that's where I wanted to be. So for me, that's when I was like, I'm moving to New York, man. So Collins and Milazzo did all these shows just before this, and they really, it was the time when Gilles Deleuze, Sévère Lafrenière, Paul Virilio, and what was called the foreign, Sévère Lafrenière introduced to the West, or to an English translated, all the New French theory, which was all post-Marxist theory. Thank God we got out of Marxism, and all that classism, and it became a much more Guy Debord. I don't know if you guys read that stuff. You really have to read it. The Foreign Agent series is pretty important. But so the French theory just took all of us by storm, and we just soaked it up, and it made such great sense, and it was so great. And so for a while, we were working our ways through French theory.
And I mean, the common ones here too in China would be Jacques Derrida, Jacques Foucault, Jean Baudrillard.
Right, but Derrida,
that's a bit earlier.
Yeah, Baudrillard and Foucault were the adversaries of the next round of Gilles Deleuze. I mean, what was the great book, Forget Foucault? Was that Deleuze? Forget Foucault. Foucault was the champion, certainly. Foucault made us all understand how the state organizes social behavior in ways that we didn't even realize. And the hierarchy of learning and all that organizational cerebrality was the subject for Foucault. But Deleuze and Guattari and Berillio made it more street. This is taking way too long. So then along, part of this is Alan McCullum, great artist. You guys know Alan McCullum? He was all about, Alan McCullum was all about the seriality of nothing. So these were surrogates, and these pictures, they numbered into the thousands. And I could read about him, but maybe you don't want to know about that. So anyway, so this dumps us off now. So here we are, and this is American Fine Arts in South Soho. And this is where me and my buddies, my group, sort of came in. This is a show by Andrea Fraser. It's called May I Help You? And she took the Alan McCullum surrogate pictures, put them around the gallery, hired actors, and so when you walk into the gallery, the actor comes right up and goes, "May I help you?" And just like, I'll just look, well, what can I help you? So it's like, they had all these phrases where they would just like challenge you. And it was like, oh shit. It was kind of uncomfortable a little bit, but it was cool. So that was Andrea's work. And Andrea and Mark, and Andrea Fraser, Mark Dion, Kristen Field-Mueller, in my gallery, in American Fine Arts, started making work about the conditions for which art is received or distributed vis-a-vis museums, much more the museums and the paper, art press, art criticism, art galleries to a certain extent. But they took the commodity critique and they really got into it philosophically and methodologically to understand in a kind of Foucaultian, Deleuzian way why we know certain things about art and how we know certain things about art and how these things get filtered down through the institution to what we understand as being art, and the conditions in which our own perception of the work of art are conditioned by the institution. So it was pretty important stuff. So Andrea made a lot of her main shtick during this early 90s was she made docent tours for museums. So, like if you go into the museum and you put the headphones, there's a voice telling you what the work of art is and the conditions in which it was made. And she scripted and made those.
As her work? You mean
as her work.
Satires or
yeah. Satires, but in a lot of different ways. And this is another one of her works. was right after May I Help You. This was in American Fine Arts moved up the street 3 doors. Andrea, video. Then Mark Dion. Mark's work was about, he took the metaphor of the institutions of art history and archaeology and how, by necessity, those institutions, and then when I say institution, I mean the Smithsonian and all the art, natural history museums, but more, in a broader sense, the institution of knowledge and how the hierarchization of knowledge had become institutionalized by necessity. Science is in the business of relegating patterns of natural history has a certain hierarchy of knowledge. That's how we understand it. So he took that as a metaphor and made it a little bit more into pedestrian, consumer, family kind of feel. But again, it was another way to talk about the institution as in a critique mode. So this is dinosaur, mobile natural history. Natural history as a vehicle for gathering and finding. This is like a very typical Mark Dion from the early 90s. So I hope what you can see there is that he's not, ultimately he is making an artwork, he is an artist. But in order to reinvent art, you can't be making art. You have to go follow some conceptual tangent that produces something that we don't expect to see as art, something unexpected. And the only way, the way we thought to make work that was unexpected was to follow the formula of your own conceptual making. So this is this is a quintessential Mark Dion piece from that period.
What is the title of that piece?
I don't remember the title of it, but they're like cataloging and research room from the Thames, or from the Hudson River, or from the East River.
I have a toy train by Mark Dion.
Yeah.
Calypso.
You're a lucky man.
What's it called right now? What's the title of it?
It's just a
Remember?
toy train.
Just a toy train. Oh.
I only have one of these. This is a great Christian Philip Mueller, and so artists, this platform where people stand and give lectures just like I am. So like this would be a Christian Philip Mueller piece right here. Boom. Move it into the gallery. Done.